The sun hung high in the afternoon sky, casting golden light over the park. Laughter and the distant hum of conversation filled the air as children ran across the grass, their sneakers kicking up bits of dirt. Parents sat on benches, some chatting, others scrolling through their phones. It was the kind of peaceful afternoon where nothing out of the ordinary was expected to happen. But then, a woman noticed something, or rather someone, that didn't sit right with her. A young black girl, no older than 9 or 10, was playing near the swings, her bright curls bouncing as she ran. She had been minding her own business, lost in the carefree joy of childhood, completely unaware that she had drawn the attention of a woman who believed she didn't belong. The woman? Mid-40s, neatly dressed, with an air of self-importance, watched the girl with narrowed eyes. She scanned the park as if expecting an adult to appear beside the child. When no one immediately did, she reached for her phone. With her lips pressed into a thin line, she dialed 911. The call was made in the tone of someone convinced they were doing their civic duty. "Yes, I'd like to report a suspicious individual," she said, her voice hushed but firm. "There's a little girl here, alone. I don't see any parents around, and I don't know what she's up to." On the other end of the line, the dispatcher asked for more details. She's just lingering near the swings. I don't know if she's waiting for someone or what, but she doesn't seem to be with anyone." The dispatcher, likely accustomed to calls like this, remained professional. "Ma'am, is the child in distress? Is she causing harm to herself or others?" The woman hesitated. "No, but I just think someone should check it out." The dispatcher took down the details, but in the background, the sounds of children playing and parents chatting contradicted the sense of urgency the woman was trying to create. Regardless, protocol was protocol. Officers were dispatched. Meanwhile, the girl continued playing, entirely unaware that a patrol car was already en route, that her presence in the park had been deemed a situation requiring police intervention. Within minutes, the sound of tires rolling over pavement caught the woman's attention. A police cruiser pulled up near the park entrance, its presence immediate and commanding. 2 officers stepped out, scanning the area before their eyes landed on the child described in the call. The woman approached them quickly, her expression one of self-satisfaction, as if she had successfully prevented some potential wrongdoing. "That's her," she said, nodding in the child's direction. "She's been hanging around here alone. I just thought someone should check." One of the officers, a middle-aged man with a firm but neutral expression, nodded and began walking toward the girl. The other followed, their approach cautious but measured. The girl, noticing them for the first time, froze. Her small hands tightened around the swing chain. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Why were they coming toward her? What had she done? The officers reached her, their shadows stretching long in the sunlight. One crouched slightly to meet her eye level. "Hey there," he said, his voice trying to be gentle. "Are you here alone?" Before she could answer, the sound of confident, fast-paced footsteps interrupted them. A woman's voice, strong, authoritative, and unmistakably in control, rang out. "She's not alone, and I'd love to know why my daughter is being questioned." The officers turned. The woman from the call did too, and that was the moment everything changed. The young girl sat frozen on the swing, her small hands gripping the metal chains as she looked up at the 2 officers standing before her. Confusion flickered across her face. Just moments ago, she had been playing, enjoying the afternoon like any other child. Now 2 uniformed men loomed over her, their presence unfamiliar and unsettling. One of the officers, a tall man with sharp features, crouched slightly to appear less intimidating. "Hey there," he repeated, his voice softer this time. "Are you here alone?" The girl's heart pounded. She wasn't sure how to respond. She knew not to talk to strangers, but these men were in uniforms with badges clipped to their chests. They were supposed to be the good guys, weren't they? But something about the way they were looking at her, curious, cautious, skeptical, made her uneasy. She hesitated, her voice small. "My mom is coming to get me." The other officer, a younger man with dark sunglasses, glanced back toward the woman who had called them. She stood nearby, arms crossed, watching like she had just done something important. The officer nodded slightly, as if validating her concerns. "You sure about that, kid?" The first officer pressed. "Where's your mom now?" The girl swallowed hard. She didn't like how this felt. Why were they asking so many questions? She had just been playing. She wasn't doing anything wrong. The woman who had made the call took a step forward, eager to add her own commentary. "I've been watching her for a while," she said, as if she were reporting a crime in progress. "She's been here all alone, and I just thought, well, you never know these days. I didn't want to take any chances." The girl looked at her, confusion deepening. She had never seen this woman before in her life. Why was she talking about her like she was some kind of problem? The younger officer spoke into his radio, quietly relaying their location and the situation. The message was simple. They were checking on an unaccompanied minor at the park. But to the girl, it felt like something bigger, something much scarier. A few other parents nearby had begun to take notice. Some looked on with mild curiosity, while others frowned, sensing something wasn't quite right. A couple of them seemed hesitant to step in, unsure of what was happening. The little girl finally found her voice. "I told you," she said, a little stronger this time. "My mom is coming." Before anyone could respond, the unmistakable sound of heels clicking against pavement cut through the air. The officers turned first, then the woman, and finally the girl herself. A tall, confident black woman was striding toward them, her expression unreadable, but her presence commanding. She was dressed in a fitted navy suit, her posture straight, her every step radiating authority. She didn't run, didn't rush, but there was something in her eyes that made it clear she was not to be questioned. The girl's face lit up in relief. "Mom!" The officers exchanged glances. The woman came to a stop in front of them, her eyes flicking from the officers to the woman who had made the call. Then slowly she reached into her blazer, pulled out a badge, and held it up for them to see. The golden emblem gleamed in the sunlight. 3 letters stood out in bold, undeniable authority. FBI. The woman's voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the edge in her tone. "Would someone like to explain why my daughter is being questioned?" Silence fell over the park. The 2 officers stood stiffly, their eyes shifting from the young girl to the woman now standing in front of them. The badge in her hand gleamed under the sunlight, the 3 bold letters, FBI, impossible to ignore. The woman who had called the police on the girl took a step back. The confidence that had once filled her posture evaporated. Her mouth opened slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. The girl's mother didn't look at her. She focused on the officers, her face unreadable. "I asked a question," she said again, her voice calm but carrying undeniable authority. "Why is my daughter being questioned?" The older officer, the one who had first spoken to the girl, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we received a call about an unaccompanied minor at the park. We were just following up to make sure everything was okay." The mother's eyes flicked to her daughter, who was still sitting on the swing, her fingers gripping the chains tightly. The little girl's expression was a mixture of relief and lingering confusion. "And did my daughter indicate at any point that she was lost or in danger?" the mother asked, her tone sharp but controlled. The younger officer adjusted his sunglasses, clearing his throat. "No, ma'am. She said she was waiting for you." The mother nodded slowly. "So, let me get this straight. A child who is doing nothing wrong, who is simply playing in a public park, gets the police called on her. And instead of immediately recognizing this for what it is, you come over here and question her like she's a suspect." The officers didn't respond immediately. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. The woman who had called the police shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean any harm," she stammered. "I was just trying to be cautious. You hear so many things these days, and I wasn't sure if she was okay." The mother's eyes finally turned to her. The look she gave her wasn't one of anger, but of something much colder, disappointment. "Cautious?" she repeated. "Tell me, did you call the police on any of the other children playing alone here today? Or was it just mine?" The woman's face paled. "That's not what this is about," she said quickly. "I was just concerned." "No," the mother cut her off. "You weren't concerned. You were suspicious, and you need to ask yourself why." The woman opened her mouth again, then shut it, realizing there was no justification she could offer that wouldn't sound exactly as bad as it was. The older officer took a step forward. "Ma'am, I assure you, we were just responding to a call. No harm was intended." The mother let out a slow breath, then crouched down in front of her daughter, her expression softening for the first time. She reached out and gently tucked one of the girl's curls behind her ear. "Are you okay?" The girl nodded hesitantly. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. The mother's jaw tightened, but she forced a small smile. "I know, baby. You did nothing wrong." Then she stood, her eyes once again locking onto the officers. "I'd like your badge numbers." Both officers hesitated, but they knew they had no choice. One by one, they recited their badge numbers, which the mother calmly typed into her phone. She turned to the woman one last time. "You may not have meant harm, but that doesn't mean you didn't cause any. Think about that." Without waiting for a response, she took her daughter's hand and led her away, leaving the officers and the woman standing in stunned silence. The mother held her daughter's hand tightly as they walked away from the officers and the woman who had called them. The little girl still looked shaken, her small fingers clutching her mother's as if afraid she might disappear. The mother could feel the tension in her daughter's grip, the silent fear that lingered, even though the moment had passed. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the anger rising in her chest. She had dealt with moments like this before, too many times, in fact, but never had it involved her daughter. Never had it been so personal. Behind them, the officers remained where they stood, shifting uncomfortably. The woman who had called them looked visibly rattled, her gaze darting around the park as if searching for some kind of escape. She had expected to be thanked, to be reassured that she had done the right thing. Instead, she had been met with an uncomfortable truth, one she hadn't been prepared to face. One of the officers, the older one, finally turned toward her. "Ma'am, we'll be leaving now. No further action is necessary." The woman nodded quickly, though she couldn't hide the embarrassment on her face. I really didn't mean to cause a problem." The younger officer gave a slight shrug, his sunglasses still covering his expression. "Next time, maybe take a second to ask yourself why you're making the call before you do." Then, with a final glance toward the mother and daughter walking away, he followed his partner back to their patrol car. The mother, now a few steps from their own vehicle, crouched down in front of her daughter. "Look at me," she said softly. The little girl hesitated before meeting her mother's eyes. "You okay?" the mother asked again, brushing a curl away from her daughter's forehead. The girl nodded slowly. "Why did they come talk to me?" The mother exhaled through her nose, choosing her words carefully. "Because someone thought you didn't belong here." The girl frowned. "But I do. We come here all the time." "I know, baby," her mother said, "and you do belong here. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't." The little girl bit her lip, looking down at the ground. "Was it because I'm black?" The mother closed her eyes for a moment before opening them again. "Yes," she said gently, "it was." The little girl didn't say anything for a long moment. Then finally she whispered, "That's not fair." The mother's heart clenched. She reached out and pulled her daughter into a hug, holding her tightly. "No, baby, it's not. But I promise you, you are not the problem, and you are never alone." They stayed like that for a moment, wrapped in silence until the mother pulled back and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Come on," she said. "Let's go home." As they walked to their car, the woman who had called the police stood frozen, watching them. She had heard everything, and for the first time, she wasn't just uncomfortable, she was ashamed. The mother drove in silence, her fingers gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. She could feel her daughter's eyes on her from the passenger seat, but she kept her gaze on the road. She needed a moment to process, to push down the simmering frustration threatening to spill over. She had spent years dealing with situations like this, but today had felt different. Today, it had been her little girl. From the corner of her eye, she saw her daughter shift in her seat, playing with the hem of her dress. That was never a good sign. It meant she was thinking, overanalyzing, maybe even doubting herself. The mother knew she couldn't let that happen. "You mad?" the girl finally asked, her voice small. The mother took a slow breath before answering. "I'm not mad at you." The girl hesitated. "Are you mad at that lady?" The mother thought about it. "Mad? Yes, but it was more than that. It was exhaustion, disappointment, frustration layered over years of experiences she had learned to navigate. She had hoped her daughter wouldn't have to navigate them too. Not this young. I'm mad at the way she saw you, the mother finally said. At the way she assumed something was wrong just because you were there. The little girl was quiet for a moment, staring out the window as the houses and trees blurred past. Then, barely above a whisper, she asked, "Did I look suspicious?" The mother's grip on the steering wheel tightened. That was the question she had dreaded. She pulled the car to a stop at a red light and turned to face her daughter. "No," she said firmly. "You look like a kid having fun at the park. That's all." The little girl nodded, but her expression was unreadable. The mother knew that even at her young age, she was trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense at all. When they finally pulled into their driveway, the mother parked and turned off the engine, but neither of them moved to get out right away. The weight of what had happened still sat between them. The mother turned to her daughter again. "I need you to hear me on this," she said, her voice steady. "People are going to make assumptions about you sometimes, wrong ones, and it won't always be fair. But that's their problem, not yours." The little girl looked up at her, searching her face for something. Maybe reassurance, maybe understanding. But what if it happens again? The mother reached over and took her daughter's hands in hers. "Then we handle it, just like we did today." The little girl nodded slowly. "Okay." They finally got out of the car, the mother locking the doors behind them. As they walked up to the house, the girl looked up at her mother. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby?" "Do people call the police on kids like me a lot?" The mother paused at the front door, her heart aching at the question. She crouched down to her daughter's level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "More than they should," she admitted. "But that doesn't mean you stop being who you are. It just means we have to be ready." The girl seemed to consider this, then nodded again, as if making a silent promise to herself. As they stepped inside, the mother knew this conversation wasn't over. It would be one of many. But for now, she would let her daughter be a kid again. She would let her go play, watch TV, do whatever she wanted to forget about today, because tomorrow the world would remind her again. That night, after dinner, the little girl sat curled up on the couch, hugging a stuffed bear to her chest. The television was on, playing one of her favorite cartoons, but she wasn't really watching it. Her mind was elsewhere. Her mother sat beside her, pretending to read a book, but watching her daughter out of the corner of her eye. She knew that look, the quiet processing, the thoughts swirling in her little head. It was the same way she had looked in the car. The mother set her book down and turned to her. "You want to talk about it?" The little girl shrugged. "I don't know." Her mother reached over and gently rubbed her back. "That's okay." A few moments passed before the girl finally spoke. "I don't get it," she said softly. Her mother waited. "What don't you get, baby?" The girl's fingers played with the ear of her stuffed bear. "I wasn't doing anything wrong." The mother's chest tightened, but she kept her face calm. "I know." "Then why did she think I was?" Her mother sighed. She wished there was an easy answer, something simple that would make sense to a child. But there wasn't. "Sometimes people see what they want to see," she said gently, "even when it's not true." The little girl frowned. "Like how monsters aren't real, but kids still think they are." The mother tilted her head, considering the comparison. "Kind of," she said. "But the difference is, those kids grow up and learn that monsters aren't real. Some adults, they never learn." The little girl thought about that for a moment. "So she thought I was a monster?" Her mother's stomach twisted at the word. "No, baby, not a monster. But she saw you as something different, something she didn't understand, and instead of asking, instead of thinking, she got scared." The girl looked down at her bear, her small fingers tracing over its fuzzy paws. "That's dumb." A short laugh escaped the mother before she could stop it. "Yeah, it is." They sat in silence for a moment. Then the girl asked, "Did this happen to you when you were a kid?" The mother exhaled slowly. "Yeah," she admitted, "it did." The girl's eyes widened. "What did you do?" Her mother smiled, though there was sadness behind it. I learned. I learned how to carry myself, how to protect myself, how to make sure people saw me for who I really was, not what they assumed." The girl nodded. "Will I have to do that too?" Her mother smoothed a hand over her daughter's curls. "I hope not as much as I did. But if you do, I'll make sure you're ready." The girl leaned into her mother's side, resting her head against her arm. I don't want to always have to be ready. The mother kissed the top of her head. I know, baby. For a while, they just sat there, the television still playing in the background, neither of them really paying attention. The little girl clutched her bear a little tighter. The mother held her a little closer. Tomorrow, the world would keep turning. More lessons would come. But tonight, at least, they had this moment. The next morning, the little girl sat at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly stirring her cereal. Normally, she would have been chatting about a dream she had or something funny she saw on TV, but today, she was quiet. Her mother watched her from the stove as she poured herself a cup of coffee, taking in the way her daughter's shoulders slumped, the way her spoon moved in slow circles without actually scooping up any food. She had seen this before, the weight of yesterday still lingering, settling in like an unwelcome guest. The mother took a deep breath, walked over, and sat down across from her daughter. You know, when I was your age, I had a teacher who didn't think I was very smart, she said, stirring her own coffee. The little girl looked up, surprised. Why? Her mother gave a small smile. Because I was one of the only black kids in the class. She never said it out loud, but I knew. She would always call on other students first, and when I gave the right answer, she'd act surprised. The girl frowned. That's mean. The mother nodded. Yeah, it was. But you know what happened? The little girl shook her head. I kept proving her wrong, the mother said. Every single time, until one day she had to admit I was just as smart as anyone else. The girl was quiet for a moment. Then she poked at her cereal. But what if people don't stop thinking bad things about me? Her mother reached across the table, taking her daughter's small hand in hers. Some people won't, she admitted, and that's not fair. But that doesn't mean they get to decide who you are. You do. The little girl considered this, her fingers tightening around her spoon. So, I just have to show them? Her mother smiled. You show them by being exactly who you are, by being kind, strong, and smart, just like you already are. The little girl sat up a little straighter. Okay. The mother could see the gears turning in her daughter's head, the way she was filing this lesson away, shaping it into something she could carry with her. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a necessary one. A few moments passed, and then the girl finally scooped up a spoonful of cereal and took a bite. As she chewed, she asked, Do you think that lady at the park feels bad now? Her mother tilted her head. I don't know, she admitted. I hope so, but whether she does or not, that's not our job to worry about. The girl nodded. Our job is just to be us? That's right, her mother said, and to never let anyone make us feel small. The little girl smiled for the first time that morning. It wasn't a big smile, but it was enough. She finished her cereal, set her spoon down, and hopped off her chair. I'm going to go get my backpack, she said, already hurrying toward her room. Her mother watched her go, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. There would be more lessons, more conversations like this. The world wouldn't change overnight. But for now, her daughter was standing a little taller, and that was a start.